States soldiers are going to land. Sadly, because this was an operation the scale of which had never been attempted before, some of the initial landing troops, like the 29th Division, the Blue and Gray Division, simply had never been in combat before. And the idea behind that was, well, if things go terribly, they don't have any experience to measure it against. They'll just say, well, this is how war actually is. And they will just keep going. Keep in mind that all of the defenses were supposed to be taken out by aerial bombardment, and every second that you delay on dropping your aerial bombs is a quarter to a half a mile in difference. Well, there was so much early morning mist and fog, the pilots, awestruck by that massive armada, waited a little bit too long, so most of the bombs dropped 1 mile to 3 miles inland. So we killed a lot of cows, we blew up a lot of trees, but we did not damage one German pillbox. The Navy guys, who had their sight obscured by not only the fog on the land, but the smoke and dust from the aerial bombardment, also overshot. So when the soldiers land, everything, the bouncing betties, the shoe mines, the barbed wire, the hedgehogs, the mine posts, the mine logs, all that stuff was still completely and totally intact. And then there's the current washing down the beach, carving out those rivulets that I told you about. So as they get ashore, and here's the Veerville Draw where those MG-42s are, and the ramp goes down and every single guy in your landing craft is shot to pieces, you do the one thing that you were told not to do, and that is to jump over the side. You did not know the depth of the water. Did I tell you about the Mae West and all that stuff yet? Okay, we'll get that in the next slide. Charles' neighbor, who the day before, when he was told to look to his right and look to his left, that 2 of the 3 of you are not going to live to see the day, Charles writes in his diary, well, I pity these 2 poor bastards. They were friends of his, but he, like every other young guy at the time, remember, the guys hitting this beach are your age, right? This is a month from now, you guys are landing on Omaha Beach. I'm too good looking, I'm too smart, I'm too lucky, I'm too blessed, I have a lucky charm, I've got my rosary beads, I've got whatever it is, I'm going to be safe. And when they got there, Charles' neighbor said his ramp went down. He's one of the first guys ashore, first wave, 6:30 a.m. He goes, I became an instant visitor to hell. Nothing that I could possibly imagine prepared me for what was about to happen. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 German installations right around Omaha Beach. Utah and Omaha are American, Gold is British, Juneau is Canadian, and Sword is also British. It is about a 60-mile swath of land in northern France that we concentrated this tremendous amount of firepower. 533,000 planes, 11,000 ships is to penetrate this area that we hoped was supposed to be lightly defended. Now, I've got to find my map here. But before we get to that, I told you about Lincoln's pregame speech. This is what we're going to do. What you do now is how you will always be remembered to the last generation. Well, the night of D-Day, and you got to imagine the tremendous stress and pressure on Eisenhower. If this thing works, he's going to be a hero. If it goes bad, you see that grid diagram on the back of the day-and-day sheet, he's going to be the fall guy. There's bad weather. He got a weather report based on a special naval ship 2,000 miles away out by Iceland that there should be calm enough weather to land on June the 6th. If he's wrong, this thing is completely done. And he said, I have a coiled spring. I am the most powerful man on the planet right now. I command all of this power. But once he gives the order to go, Eisenhower said he became the most impotent man on the planet. Nothing he could do would enable his soldiers to succeed. He gave the order, they had prepared, they had done everything possible. Here you go. So he writes an order of the day. It's called Order of the Day number 51. And an order of the day is a communication that goes to every single part of the military personnel. Soldiers, sailors, airmen, doctors, nurses, cooks, everybody gets it. So you don't want to use them constantly. Or if you issue too many orders of the day, well, it's just like another message. This one is special. And it's one of my favorite letters of all time, and he embossed it on his letterhead. And for the office of the chef, the supreme leader, Eisenhower chose this specific patch to be on the shoulder to let you know that this person was part of his staff. And he has a shield. It's shaped like a shield, and he picked it because he called this the Great Crusade. So this is like a medieval knight's shield, and he said we have this sword with flame on it. This is the sword of light, of truth and justice, going into the darkness, the black part of the shield. The darkness is Nazi tyranny, who had fallen over the continent of Europe. But here is the flame of justice and light coming back to bring light, to bring freedom and justice to the continent. And on the top, he has this Carolina blue sky and this rainbow. And he took the colors from every country that was aiding in the D-Day landing to put the rainbow on the top. As the sword brings the light of truth and justice, the rainbow is going to happen and peace will once again dawn over Europe. So a lot of artistic thought going into this patch. And this is what Eisenhower says, one of my favorite letters ever. Soldiers, sailors, airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to impart upon the great crusade for which we have striven these many months. And the next line to me is the most powerful. You're 18 to maybe 24, and the chef says, the eyes of the world are upon you. Everybody in the world is holding its breath, watching what you are going to do. Everybody in the world is watching you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people march with you. So the entire free world is depending on what you do in these next few hours. We are all watching you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms, you will bring about the destruction of the Nazi war machine and the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. So you're not only just going to liberate France and Europe, you are going to preserve peace and security for your family way back at home. Now your task, guys, isn't going to be an easy one. The German is well trained, he is well equipped, he is battle hardened, and he will fight you savagely. We know these German soldiers they're good. Look at what they have done in 4 years. They've locked down pretty much the entire continent. So these aren't second stringers. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940 and 41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle. So we've stood toe-to-toe. We've taken pretty much everything they got. We bungled through North Africa and we won there. We did a pretty decent job in Sicily since we got rolling. And yeah, we've been slow going in Italy, but you know what? We still won every time. Everything hadn't been great, but it's worked. Our air offensive has totally reduced their effectiveness on the ground. Our home fronts have given us a great, overwhelming superiority in weapons, in manpower, and munitions. All right? So we've built incredible things. The home front has kicked in and placed at our disposal a great reserve of manpower. So while the German army is dwindling, is being compressed little by little by little in Russia, in North Africa, in Italy, we're still getting stronger. While they're getting weak, we are getting stronger. The tide has turned, and the free men of the world are marching together in victory. I have full confidence in your courage, your skill, your devotion to duty in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us beseech the blessings of Almighty God in this great and noble undertaking. So you're a paratrooper back there by Ben, or the smaller version up here, getting ready to jump in, and you read that. And I don't really have to get past the opening line. The eyes of the world are upon you, all right? The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere are focused on you. Man, I mean, let's just go and let's just kick as much butt as we possibly can. This is going to be awesome. But Eisenhower is a little nervous. Yes, sir?
The Nazis defending Normandy, have they had a break since Hitler's expansion started?
They have, and here is the thing. Our intelligence said the troops defending Normandy were what was called an Ost troop, O-S-T. They were conscripts from German-conquered territory that were brought over to be laborers. And there were a lot of them there. But when Rommel takes over, Rommel shows up one day, unannounced. And people are like, oh, not only did Rommel scare the crap out of the Allied command structure, but he was terrifying to the average German soldier, because he had a reputation for being not only a strategic genius, but also kind of like Patton, getting his men in line. There was no slack duty when Rommel was around. In between March and May of 1944, he quadruples pretty much the defenses in and around Omaha Beach. And he's the one guy, even though he interrogated George Lane, he's the one guy who always said, I feel the attack is going to happen in Normandy. And that is because if you look at like a Google Earth view of the beach in Salerno, Italy, there's a very slight like curvature or crescent to it. Not real big, and it has a very shallow gradient coming out of the water that would enable heavy equipment and landing craft to land in. If you took Salerno and flipped it over and laid it over top of Omaha, you would see they're almost, like if you didn't know it, you couldn't tell there was a difference. He goes, so here, you know, the bluffs are higher. Here is where if I had to bet, and I'm going to defend it just in case, they are going to land. So, what was your question again? I totally went off on a tangent there. Oh, yes. So not only are the Ost troops removed, but taking a break from the Eastern Front, the 3 or 4 of the most hardcore killer units in the entire German army are told to go to northern France for rest and relaxation. So over in the Russian front, there was what is known as the Black Flag. The Russians and the Germans said, we are not going to take prisoners. So don't even bother surrendering because you're going to die. You might as well keep fighting. Well, that type of fighting, combat in any shape or form is stressful. But the Black Flag, win or die, man, every now and then I need a break. So you've got Fallschirmjäger units, German paratroopers. You've got the 321st Volksgrenadiers, kind of like German versions of the Army Rangers. You've got the 21st Panzer Division, Rommel's own units. And a lot of these guys, I'll give you their numbers tomorrow, are Waffen-SS, which means they're killers, all right? So a lot of people say, oh, well, the Germans on Omaha, they weren't really top-notch troops. No, that is completely not true. They are some of the most hardcore killers that this came from Russia, and that's what we're going toe to. So these aren't like weak pansies. And northern France, you know, it's summertime, fields are blossoming, you know, it's a nice place to go, relax close to the beach, calm down, because nothing's going to happen there. So those guys come for rest and refit, and we run headlong into some of the very best soldiers the German army had left. But here we go. And so these are some of the photos. There were several big-time journalists that landed on Omaha Beach. There's a New York Times reporter named Robert Capra. Also landing for the Organization of Strategic Services is a guy named John Ford. John Ford was a big-time Hollywood movie producer. He made a lot of the famous John Wayne movies like True Grit and The Searchers and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. With him is Mr. Ernest Hemingway, the hardcore soldier, the ambulance driver from World War I. Ford and Hemingway will be trapped underneath part of a pier that is still there. And Ford was filming a little bit, but he said that he believed he urinated himself nearly non-stop on that day. And Hemingway said he crapped his pants 3 times. He said, I was so terrified and awestruck. They said there were so many bullets flying over the beach that it sounded like a swarm of bees. There were so many you could almost physically see them. And both of them said what we could not get over is the amount of American young men who just kept going. We're hiding underneath a pier behind a big rock, peeing and pooping ourselves, and these guys are going forward. The fourth guy took some of the most interesting sources, primary sources of D-Day. His name is Robert Sargent, and this is one of his photographs, and they're kind of grainy. You can see a hedgehog here, a landing craft coming in. You can see bodies and floats in the water. But this is Robert's most famous, whoops, that's practicing on the Ivory Coast. Here's a map of our objectives. And this here is the road N13 that runs through Caen and through Bayeux, where William the Conqueror's tapestry is. This road, famous road N13, is essential because it is like the I-40 of northern France. And whoever controlled N13 could bring troops and reinforcements anywhere along the Normandy region. Question back and just flex it. So we were supposed to capture that by 9:30 a.m. And this broken line here, these are our D-Day objectives. We are supposed to be 20 miles inland to the town of St. Lo on D-Day. That is the rigorous timetable. Can't find my laser pointer. That Bernard Law Montgomery had drawn up. It takes until July 20th to get to St. Lo. This dark shaded areas, these are the penetration, the secure areas after the fighting on June the 6th. The British and Canadians made pretty good penetration, but they didn't get to the road. There's Omaha, there's the Veerville Draw, and there's Utah Beach. So we got barely an eighth of the territory we were supposed to get in the fighting on that day. Virtually everything that could have possibly went wrong will go wrong. And I got to remember to tell you guys the story of Louis Menendez today. Here is what makes Sargent's photograph so special. This is the clearest one. And it shows guys coming out of the landing craft. It is one of the later, the first wave had gone in, and Sargent was getting on this landing craft and heading back out. But you can just see this guy, and we've got like Cole and Jackson and Beckett and Hunter who are tall, and Alvin, Nick, and then there's guys like me. So there's a few, like how tall are you guys? What, like 6'3", 6'4"? All right, so, 6 and 8 inches. And if you look here at the water, this guy is up to his armpits, this guy is up to his waist, this guy is up to his neck, these guys are up to their chest, and they're walking up on shore. And that's because I told you about I almost drowned recreating this landing, or I did that. So these are those rivulets where you're ankle or knee deep and bloop, you take a step off and you fall into that water. You can't see them underneath the murk. Plus, by this time, there's blood in the water. You simply cannot see. Yes, sir?
I have 2 questions.
Yep.
A, how much did all their gear weigh?
Their gear weighed between 60 and 80 pounds. And then some guys get a little overeager. They carried as much as 100 pounds. And a couple of mistakes are going to be made. One of them is with all the good intentions in the world. On board the Navy ships, the guys going in, they wanted to give them a good, nice, hearty breakfast so they can fight all day. So it was steak and eggs and sausages and baked beans and coffee and orange juice. And guys had been living on like kidney beans and like, salted cod. Man, you give me steak and eggs and orange juice and coffee and pancakes, I'm going to eat. I'm going to go like I'm at a Golden Corral. Well, they hit the water, and the English Channel is always rough. A lot of the guys became seasick and started to throw up. What they needed was speed and mobility. A lot of the guys that made it said they ate an apple or like a Hershey's chocolate bar. And so their stomachs were not churning with all the grease and food, bacon, sausages, you name it. And so it was a great idea, but man, give the guys the food after the beachhead is secure. Yes, ma'am.
I don't think you actually told us that you almost drowned.
Yeah.
Okay. So in 1999, in my infinite wisdom, I decided that I would simulate coming out of the beach of Omaha. And I was going to do it, and nobody was shooting at me, so I was going to mount up and I was going to get all the gear that they had, except instead of an M1, I had like a 10-pound metal pipe. This is the only thing that made it out of the water. All right, my backpack, that metal pipe, all that crap is still there because I was marching along, hit one of those rivulets, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm trying to get it all off, and I come staggering out, and my wife is on the beach with a French farmer going like, what the hell? Well, I just, my husband, he's completely, they didn't know how bad it really was, but I was scared. I was like, oh, I'm going to drown in the English Channel off Omaha. Kind of fitting, but like I really would rather not if I could all avoid that. I also did it in January. I figured if someone was shooting at me, I'd make it colder, which was really dumb. So please try not to ever do that. So anyway, I was just literally walking along, like narrating, talking, and then I was done.
Wait, what did you?
The way the waters run, I stepped into one of those channels that was like 10, 12 feet deep, and it was like 15 feet wide, and I was like scrambling for the edge, and like I'm like, oh man, this is not good. All right, we wouldn't try to avoid this at all. What's that? Yeah, I was like, huh. All right. And again, there was nobody
There.
shooting at me. Like I was like just a dude walking along the beach in January in northern France. So, but you can see how high the bluffs are and the beach. Here's already a landing craft or a tank blowing up. These dark shapes are bodies. Sergeant's job, given to him by Eisenhower, was to get back and give him evidence. Eisenhower wanted to know what was happening. This is a much later shot, but you can see how far out in the water the landing. This is like 4th or 5th wave. Here's the bluffs up here, and even these guys. See, these guys are up to their knees, and this guy's up to his waist. You really never knew, and it's still that way to this very day. Sergeant gets on a landing craft, and he had a special pass that any ship had to give him passage, get him back to England, so he could get those photographs developed. He took 120 pictures on D-Day. He gets on a landing craft, he gets a hospital ship, got to a big destroyer, it speeds him back to Dover, he gets a car up to London, and he goes in with his photographs to a lieutenant colonel in charge of photographic intelligence. And he said, these are for the chef, develop them right away. Well, the lieutenant colonel had a rendezvous with his French girlfriend. So as he put the negatives in the solution to render the picture, he left them in too long. So he overexposed 112 of the 120 photographs. So we lost enormous amounts of primary documents due to, well, to tell you the rest of the story, the guy gets court-martialed. The lieutenant colonel gets court-martialed for dereliction of duty, being, AWOL, failure to obey a direct order. And when he gets convicted, he's sentenced to 20 years in Leavenworth. All right. As he was leaving, Eisenhower is legendarily supposed to have been at the back of the room, and when the guy walked by, he said, "I hope she was worth it." So anyway, Eisenhower, good dude, but I would not want to make him. And you had one job: tell your girlfriend you'll be there in an hour. But he overexposed and ruined all those photographs. So there is that story. And this is when you finally get up off the beach. We'll see one here. This is that rounded stone known as the shingle. It was about the halfway point, and the Germans knew exactly how far it was, and one guy isn't worth the ammo. But a bunch, how much time do we have? 5, okay. They knew a bunch of guys are going to collect here, and they're going to feel safe. So they were lobbing artillery shells when a group of guys collected, blowing them to pieces. And it's where the medics began to collect the wounded. This is one of Sargent's pictures of the end of the first wave. It's kind of hard to tell, but there's bodies and body parts laying in here. The guys going in were told to take 3 days worth of gear. Now when you hear you're supposed to take 3 days, well, I'm going to shove in an extra C ration, maybe an extra carton of cigarettes, maybe some more grenades. So with their churning stomachs and their heavy packs, they never had a chance. 5 MG-42s pumping out 25 bullets a second each. They were just mowed down because they couldn't run. A lot of them that jump over the sides, they inflate their Mae West life jackets. It's like that tannish yellow life jacket. It was called a Mae West after a large-chested actress of the day. Problem with that, modern day life jacket, it is what it is, man. I can't, modern day life jackets will keep your nose and your head out of the water. The buoyancy is all up top. Well, the CO2 for a Mae West was around the midsection. So as they had all of the weight on their back and shoulders when they pulled the inflatable tube, the buoyancy flipped them upside down. So their legs are dangling out of the water, and they drowned because they couldn't get their gear off. That is, so between the food and the Mae West, things went horribly awry. The first wave is pretty much sacrificed. But the second, third, and fourth waves who are going into that hell dropped all of their gear, swam in, and picked up gear that was abandoned by the massacred first wave. So the sacrifice proved useful. Yes, ma'am?
So, as they were coming in, obviously, like, everyone was dying, so how did they know who to go? Like, how did they know who to go? I mean, they'd sell you plans before, but
the guys that make it just said, we just knew that we had to get up and off that beach, and we would figure out where we were later. Like right now, we've got them to move. Yes, sir?
Is there any actual video from the landing, or is it all photos?
Yes, there is some. The Germans have some really good film. I'll show it to you. This is a picture of the shingle that was used as a collection point for the wounded. And Bedford medic, a guy named Cecil Breeden, was seen walking back and forth, patching everybody that he could up. And what makes D-Day so weird is here's this clear, distinct photograph of this young man right here. Everyone else is bandaged up. This guy's got gauze on his face. Don't know what's wrong with him, but we to this day don't know who he is. None of the guys he served with said, oh, hey, that's like Garrett or like Baxter or Danny or Nick, nor had his family come forward to identify one of these great photos of D-Day, leading us to believe that he did not survive the war, and most of these guys probably got blown up in one of those German mortar attacks, because nobody knows, and that's about a crystal clear shot as you can get on D-Day morning. So, here is beginning, going into the evening, trees just blown apart and shredded, landing craft. This is more up by Utah, bodies laying around. It was just a scene, as Charles Neighbor says, right out of hell. And the paratroopers, the 82nd and the 101st, were assigned a couple key areas. The town of St. Mary-Glaise here, a little farther south, St. Marie-du-Mont, and down here was Carentan. This blue is a swamp. The French farmers had built right here a lock system to raise and lower the level of water for their crops. It was called the La Barraqueta Lock. The Germans had it wired to explode. Coming across it were 4 small causeways that the Germans had defended. The 82nd and 101st, it was their job to capture the lock and prevent it from exploding. If not, the Germans could flood this area with between 4 and 6 feet of water, making it impossible to move up on. 95% of our paratrooper drops on that day will be misses. The only group that lands where they're supposed to is the British 6th Airborne, as they land in Caen and capture a key bridge called Pegasus Bridge. Don't have enough time to tell you the whole story, so I'll try and hit it. Who's going to be gone tomorrow? All right, maybe we'll watch a little video tomorrow, and I'll tell you guys the story when you get back. This is a C-47 cargo plane, and it would hold about 15 paratroopers. And just like the soldiers going in, these pilots had never been in combat before. And they were going to fly in 3 waves stacked up lower, middle, and high. And they were staggered to give the paratrooper time to jump out before the next row of planes came and ran them over. You were told no matter what, you cannot climb, you cannot dive, and you cannot bank right or left, or you will cause mid-air collisions. The C-47 Dakota is a rugged airplane. It'll take it, keep flying. Because if you dive, your troopers won't have enough time to deploy their chute and they'll splatter. If they're up too high, the Germans will either shoot them or the succeeding waves of planes will run them over. Well, as soon as they get over France, the anti-aircraft guns start opening up and pilots panic. Some bank left, some bank right, some climb, some dive. Paratroopers are getting run over, some are splatting on the ground. And another big mistake comes up. The British had this device called a leg bag. I guess we'll stop here with this one. Yes, sir. All right, well, I'll pick up on the leg bag next time I see you. Cole, hit stop for me, please, and I'll take care of the rest. And I got to find the real MG-40.